Let's call this work session order. This is on AO 2015-28. Let's go around the room and identify ourselves for the record. The tape is on.
Jennifer Johnston.
Bill Evans. Dan Sullivan, Mayor.
Dick Craney.
Elvie Gray Jacks.
Bernie Hall, Ken Steele.
Amy Domboski.
Keith Peterson.
Well, welcome. This will take about an hour. And Ernie, congratulations.
Thank you.
Elvie, you want to lead us in a song of Happy Birthday?
No,
for
she
him?
does not.
Don't worry, I got you back. It ain't happening.
Good girl.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Hey, this could be historic. The newspapers are here.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mayor, you want to start this off?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and all those folks in the very back row. You can actually sit in
Come
the
forward.
front
We
row
won't
where
bite.
I'm seriously, come on up to the front row because you may be called upon to speak, and it's just easier to facilitate.
Looks like we're in algebra class or something.
Yeah.
And there's no chance of that wall falling down either. So
The
it
teacher
doesn't
is
need
not
the
going to
support.
ignore you because you're in the back row. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ordinance was introduced really to satisfy one essential component of what public service is about, and that is serving your customers. You know, myself and Mr. Flynn and others who are in the retail business of one kind or another figure out pretty quick that the customer is generally right, and your business model should be to serve the customer. And I don't think city government should be any different. And what we found over the several years of my administration is that we did a reorganization within a year or two of when we came into office. We wanted to try a different model, and quite frankly, we've come to the conclusion that that model is not the most efficient model for serving the customers, which is the building community, whether it's the residential builders, the general contractors, the architects, the planners that work with the private sector. They've reached out to us and said, are you willing to try something different and a different model that places the Building Safety Department under the Public Works Department, where we think there'll be efficiencies, we think there'll be economies of scale, and we think for the most part it'll serve the customer better. And that's the goal of the ordinance. The administration supports it 100%, which is why we put it forward. We're hoping the Assembly will also listen to the customer and come to the same conclusion that this is about customer service. These are the guys that pay into the 181 fund. These are the guys that are on the hook for, in a very short construction season, getting things done for their customers timely, efficiently, and we have to be a partner in that. And quite frankly, I would admit that we have not been as good a partner as we could have been. And it's not this administration, but if you look over the course of the last several decades, I think it's been pretty consistent that somehow the way that we conduct our business and compared to places like Seattle or even Fairbanks, they seem to just have a better relationship, a better understanding of what customer service is about, and we want to improve that. I realize I've only got a couple months left here, but the building season is short. It's starting now. It's already started. I really hope the Assembly will support serving the customer. And with that, I know we've got Andre Spinelli here from the home builders. We've got John McKinnon from the general contractors. We'd love for them to have an opportunity to talk about why they support the reorganization and not to get personal into who's done what or what project, but just more the general concept of what we're proposing and why they think it's good for their industry. So with that, Mr. Chairman, fine, turn it over to you.
We've
Andre,
got
you
about
want-
55
you want-
minutes. Andre, you want to start it off?
Sure. I won't take 55 minutes. But, got some stuff here that I brought forward. First off, I just want to introduce myself for anyone that doesn't know me. I'm with Spinell Homes. Moved up here in 1984. My dad was managing a construction company that built houses, primarily a small amount of commercial construction. In 87, his boss went bankrupt and told him to sell everything, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to buy it from you because I'm like it here and I'm going to stay here." So I've been here since I was 7 years old and pretty much knew what I was going to do ever since then. So I kind of feel like I've been building houses in this town for probably a lot longer than I could actually say I have professionally. But all that being said, I'm past president of the Anchorage Home Builders. I'm the current vice president of the State Home Builders Association, and I chair the Municipality of Anchorage's Housing and Neighborhood Development Commission, which I've been a member of for quite some time. So I get exposed to quite a lot of stuff when it comes to housing through all of those position. And I kind of just want to run you through some of the stuff that, you know, I know about, that's been around, that I've read, that kind of speaks to this. And I'll just start with this Housing and Neighborhoods Task Force. This was chaired by Assembly Member Sheila Selcraig. And this was done back in '09. There's a collection of stakeholders throughout the community. They've studied Anchorage's problems. This was mainly spurred on by the HUD Deputy Secretary Ron Sims' comments that he said HUD deals with three types of cities: growing and stable cities, cities that will probably not grow but are stable, and then cities that are in transition and could be shrinking. He said we view Anchorage as a city in transition. So they were kind of, the whole tone of this presentation was they were slightly scared that Anchorage was losing its tax base to the Matsu Borough and was going to take on the congestion and the infrastructure costs while losing, you know, basically importing our workforce and exporting our tax base to the Matsu Borough, which was not a win-win. The number 4 recommendation, I'll just kind of skip through this, was to assign a single project advocate to have responsibility and accountability for the development through the entire permitting process. That was kind of one of 10 recommendations that came out of this group. After that, I'll move on to Mayor Sullivan's Builders Roundtable. This was after Mayor Sullivan heard some feedback on the way the department was being run and our ability to get permits and get them in a timely fashion, and what it's doing to the cost of our product and ultimately, you know, the cost of housing in Anchorage. And I think, if I can find it here, one of the top recommendations out of this thing, number 1, reinstate a department head that can also act as a liaison with builders when needed. And so that, this study. Then we had the Anchorage Housing Market Analysis, and this was something that I participated on through the HAND Commission. And it basically kind of lined out how we're, you know, in 20 years, we're 8,000 houses short in our community. And then from this, because they didn't really make policy recommendations, the Mayor's Kitchen Cabinet, or actually this is the work group for affordable housing, which is a subcommittee of the Mayor's Kitchen Cabinet, reviewed this report and then made its recommendations. Assign a single project advocate to have responsibility and accountability throughout the entire permitting process for multifamily, housing redevelopment, and affordable housing development. So the concept has been echoed several times over, and you know, the way I feel as a developer trying to provide as affordable housing as I can for, you know, the workforce of this town, I sometimes feel like I'm caught in between a battle between two departments, and that's why we advocate for one person that's accountable for both entities down at 4700 Elmore. And I do have examples, but in respect to the mayor's comments, maybe I better leave those out since he went ahead and said that. That's really all I have is that the home builders support this, and I just kind of wanted to run through all the history of support from various other groups besides just home builders.
Question from assembly members. Ms. Johnston.
One of the thoughts on this is that the homeowners are looking, or the Home Builders Association is looking a way of getting around code or looking for a fix. How do you respond to that? And because, I mean, you know, the question is, or the insinuation is that we're going to go back to some poor construction times of the 80s. And what do you see different in this community now versus what was happening in the 80s? Because that's better for me.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I could pretty much say that the numbers speak for themselves. in the 1980s, from what I'm told, we were building something like 9,000 houses a year in the municipality of Anchorage. And last year we did like 300 new houses. I think that's the difference. I mean, if you, I don't know this, but I would imagine we have more employees at the building department than now looking over 300 houses than we did back then looking over 9,000 houses. And so what I think is the pendulum has swung too far the other way, and we need to find probably a happy medium where we can not circumvent safety, not provide a shoddy project or a product, because that's not what builders want to do. The last thing I want to do is, have a bunch of people running around saying Spinell Homes doesn't do a good job, or Spinell Homes ruined my neighborhood, or Spinell Homes messed up the drainage of the entire city of Anchorage, and now we're all got mud puddles in our yard.
So you feel the market has as much of a control over this, and your reputation in the market is more important than sometimes what we do as a government?
Well, that's, for me, that's
So,
how I.
Can you just explain to the rest of the assembly, can you give an example of how many inspections you go through for one house?
Well, just the house itself gets about 25 inspections, 20 to 25. And that's just the standard amount, assuming everyone is approved first try. And, oftentimes,
How many of those on site?
they're all.
All on site. So you could have an inspector come out and you have to wait for their results, and you have to hold whatever you're doing until the inspector's done or comes back.
Yeah. I mean, to give you a specific example of the inspections that really bug me sometimes, is in the fall when we're doing duplex buildings, and before we raise a common wall, we need to have the nailing inspected on that common wall, and then we put the sheetrock on there for fire protection. And so those are two separate inspections. First, the shear of the nailing, that's a structural, and then the firewall inspection. Those are two inspections on that wall. They have to happen that day. There's usually a framing crew there. When we have those inspections in the fall and the municipality is really busy, sometimes we'll send crews home because the municipality can't keep up with our inspection.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr.
And-
Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering, do we need to merge the departments to create the project advocate position? I mean, if the project advocate is the number one recommendation, at least one of the recommendations I'm hearing a lot about, could we do that with the current structure?
But we're not really merging departments in the sense, community planning will still exist as a separate department. We're just taking an element of it, which is the building safety component, and putting it under Public Works. Public Works builds things. And so having the department that builds things actually overseeing, the private sector that builds things, there's synergy there. And I think the goal would be to have the Public Works director, who is formerly the building safety director, who's very, very knowledgeable about all of the issues that somebody like Spinell Homes or a general contractor go through, to essentially be that advocate with an intermediary, which is currently Mr. Bob Kniefel, who is kind of the first line of advocacy, if you will. But then you've got somebody who will be his boss that is very, very knowledgeable and can make those final decisions in a timely manner that keeps the projects moving along. And the building industry, has confidence in that team, and that's the big motivation behind this, is that, again, it's customer service. The customer is asking that team be the overseers of what they do. And so, we're not totally merging departments, just a section of one department.
Thanks.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Andre, for being here, and everyone else who's here from the industry. Thank you. You referenced some reports, and I recognize them, in particular the one that Sheila Selkirk presented some time ago. What are the dates on those reports?
This Sheila Selcraig's
2009.
Housing Task Force was '09, and most of these are all, this one, we started this in 2010, the final draft came out March 2012, and then the Mayor's Builders Roundtable was February of 2012, and then this Mayor's Kitchen Cabinet Working Group on Affordable Housing was May of 2000.
Right, right. Because I remember Sheila's really well, which thank you for reminding me that it happened in 2009. And thus, the reorg in 2010 happened, and I thought it was a result of her comments in her report and comments from other reports. And you don't have to respond. I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hull.
Actually, what I was going to ask is, I don't know how many people are going to testify. I've got a number of things
We
I
have
want to
3 or 4.
say, but I would like to hear everybody, and then, instead of eating up a bunch of time. So I would ask for that consideration if possible. Let the ones that want to speak, and hopefully they'll all stay at the table here, and then we can engage them in questions.
We'll get there. Thank you. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, you mentioned how many units we did way back when and how many we're doing now. A lot of that is because of the change in the community, not so much vacant land, having to do some redevelopment, picking up smaller parcels, fitting whatever you're doing into the neighborhood and that type of thing. How has that changed your activity and impacted the numbers?
Well, I think, when you start a building project, it takes a while to get something going. Like, let's just give the Sand Lake,
Plan review.
the Sand Lake gravel pit or West Park subdivision, however you want to refer to it, is a good example of a last really big project. And it applies the same to smaller projects. You get them going. At first, it's just a big bulldozed area, and nobody really feels like they really want to take the first step on buying in there. And eventually, people just have to buy there. The houses start getting built up. They landscape their yards. Families are there. It feels more like a neighborhood. And then sales really take off. And so they start off slow. What we're seeing now, I'm at least personally for Spinell Homes, is the projects, they're not big. And so you're not dealing with, 700 homes, and takes a year to get it going, and then once it's going, 4 or 5 years developing 700 units. So I have several small projects now. I have 22 units out off Lake Otis, let's say. They're really nice area, really nice condos, but I'm on the first 4, and they take some time to get those first 4 sold. And I have several projects like that. So we just don't have the momentum because we're so kind of scattered about, and that's a big one, I believe. And then a lot of it is the cost of housing has been increasing dramatically over the last 2 years. I mean, and it's not just, say, Title 21 or permitting. It's the cost of materials, and the energy code was a huge one. I saw a $20,000 increase over the last 2 years, roughly. 10,000 of that was the energy code. That's a huge increase, and it's something that we try to sell to the buyers. But when the buyers go out and they say, "Well, here's the house you're building now, and it's not that much different than the one you built 18 months ago. Only one costs $20,000 less." I go, "Yeah, well, this one has a higher energy rating." That's not always a selling point for the buyers. They say this one already has window coverings and the grass is already matured. So
If I can.
One last question, sir.
Yeah, in terms of Paul, on the there's kind of 2 phases of interface with the department. It seems to me that's on plan check and plan approvals and that type of thing, and then it's the on-site reviews. Seems to me that the plan check, getting the initial approval, is probably as onerous as the inspections on site.
they could, they're all tougher than they used to be and get tougher all the time.
And the reorganization would help in that respect as well.
We believe so, and it ties in more than just the building process, the vertical construction process, but it's the private development process is really where we were spread out, where private development was under one department, but they had 3 or 4 reviews, traffic, street maintenance, street lights, and a couple others that referred back to the Public Works Department and the municipal engineer. And there was just this lack of synergy there that the public was suffering. And I, like I said, I'll leave the examples, but I have to.
Thank you. That's all the questions we had for you. Mr. Tanner?
I didn't really want to testify, but I'm available to answer questions. We do feel very strongly that we need.
Come to the table, Bill, if you would, so Mike will pick you up and everything.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I really just wanted to be available to answer questions. We feel strongly that having one person in charge of all permitting is far more efficient way to handle the process that the customer goes through in obtaining permits, whether it's for a subdivision or for a building permit. So Andre's given you multiple examples of that, and we would like to see this reorg go through. I've been building in Anchorage for over 30 years, and I go back to the Jim Farrow era where he was in charge of Public Works, and Public Works was in charge of all permitting. It worked beautifully back then. Now, with the Greg Jones, I call it the Greg Jones reform, it looked good on paper, but functionally, it was awkward at best. So we do want one person in charge of all permitting.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Jennifer, I'm sorry.
I just, with the Greg Jones reorg, do you think what happened there is that then Greg Jones left the municipality because he would have been that one person? I guess,
He was a missing piece for sure, but you've got to realize that there's a different culture between Public Works and planning. And Public Works, we're builders, we're out in the field, we're dealing with dirt and mud and concrete, and we need to know that we can get things done. And things in the planning department look pretty on paper, but it's just not reality. And I think if you do have this kind of culture difference, you need to bring them together under one roof and one person. You've got to have one king that rules the kingdom. And with that in effect, if you have a problem, you can go to that one person and solve the problem.
And Bill, you want to add that once Karen Mathis held this position, so she wasn't necessarily a king.
Karen, she was the queen. She did a great job. And this goes back to the Meistern administration, where we had a liaison that acted as a force between the administration and the department, and kind of refereed and negotiated all of the issues between the industry and the administration and the department. So we have this person in place that was very helpful. She helped change the culture down at the department so it was more customer oriented. She also helped the builders understand what the problems were in permitting, because we couldn't see a lot of behind the scenes work that took place. So I think Karen Mathis has served in that position, Joe Murdy has served in that position, Craig Campbell. So we've had a lot of individuals, that high caliber individuals, that help the industry move through the permitting process a lot better and made some great changes.
Jennifer?
just to follow up to your statement as far as what's handled now in Public Works and what's handled in community development, you just touched on it, and I just think it's important that we know which department you work with for which.
Well, so like if I submit plans to build a private road or a road that will be public that I'll turn over, they go through the private development, which is a division of development services, which is underneath the building official, which is currently under, I believe, community development. But there'll be several reviews in that process that are done by street maintenance, traffic, and maybe a couple others that are under the public works side. And we've had several instances where things have happened on the public works side that weren't communicated over to the private development side. For instances, a time limit for the municipal engineer to provide comment on a variance. After the reorg, the temporary reorg, the home builders started meeting with Ron Thompson, and we kind of said, hey, look, we need a time limit on variances because, you know, these hold up our development projects, you know, and they're usually pretty easy. Like, you know, West Park, every single phase of West Park had the same variance, and it's like, why would the third time in a row with the same engineer and maybe it's Hultquist, Peterson Group, or Spinell Homes, but it's the same civil engineer and the same variance, why does it take 6 months for the municipal engineer to respond? So we had a meeting with the municipal engineer and asked him about it. He said, sorry, we can't give you a time limit. Once we started meeting with Ron Thompson, he said, well, I had given a 30-day time limit on the municipal engineer to respond to variances. And the only thing, I never really held the municipality's feet to the fire, and I never heard why, but I asked around, nobody had heard of it. And the only thing I can come up with is that was on the public works side, and the municipal engineer didn't apply that to the private development side. And that's just one example of where we were caught in the middle of this kind of miscommunication or lack of leadership. I don't know what you want to call it.
Any other questions? So many members. We'll get back to where you want to go, Ernie. I won't let somebody else testify. Mr. McKinnon, you want to come and talk to us? Can you tell us who you represent? Not that we don't know, but just for the record.
I understand that. For the record, I'm John McKinnon. I'm the Executive Director of the Associated General Contractors. We're a construction trade association, approximately 650 members. We're a statewide organization, and typically we don't get involved in local issues, but there are some that rise to the level of importance that my members say get involved in this. An example is like Title 21. I can't think of how many years, how many hundreds, if not thousands of man-hours were spent on working that issue. We got involved in this a couple of years ago with Mr. Hall and about 8 or 10 of my contractor members, and there was a lot of frustration expressed at the time, and Ernie met with us, and I think over the course of a couple of months, you know, there was nothing that could be done immediately, but he said, let's see what we can do, and this is my version of it, and you know, over time, Mr. Thompson got involved in the building department, and there have been some improvements, but I don't have the street level experience that these gentlemen do, but from what I've heard from my members, what they're saying is what I've heard. Definitely a culture problem in the building department. And I ran the Department of Transportation for the state, the highway side and facility side for 5 years, and similar culture side there in many areas. And when you have that, there are certain things you can do and can't. And one of those things you can do is restructure it. And we made some restructural changes in the Department of Transportation during my tenure there that made some significant improvements. In this particular situation right here, to put it under one leader in one silo can only improve the situation that we have. Got contractors that look forward to working out of town and not in town, simply because of the ease of doing the work. Ms. Johnson asked the question if this was an attempt to try and lower the standards and skirt around some of the code issues. You know, compared to '83 and the boom that was going on there, there's an order of magnitude of professionalism today that didn't exist then. I can say unequivocally that the average contractor today is 10 times what the average contractor was in the early '80s. Early '80s, all it took to be a contractor was a pickup truck with a rack on top and a set of nail bags, and that's not too far from the truth. It's not the same way now, and again, the level of professionalism, but the level of frustration that's felt by a lot of the builders, not just on the plan review process, but when you're actually building, you get different interpretations of the same code depending on who you get, and it can be very frustrating for the builders. And on the commercial side, which are the people that I represent, it's a solid support for a change. And little question that this won't improve things. It will improve things.
Questions from assembly members?
Yeah, is there anyone else?
Anybody else who was scheduled to testify?
If there's somebody else.
You want to get Mr. Keneally?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Bob, I put you on the spot the last time, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it again. And it's up to you if you want to talk, but I would really like to hear what you have to say. Oh, you're going to tell us? Well, great.
Come take a
Thank
seat,
you.
Bob. He may be here a while.
No. Just to explain, I'm Bob Kniefel. I'm the building official. I've been appointed by the mayor on a temporary term between January and June. And so I'm kind of in a unique position. I'm probably the one employee who was hired under the Community Development Department, and before I got started, I was told to report to the Public Works Director. So it's kind of I'm working a mixed bag here, Nat, if you will, in that. Maybe just a couple comments. I'm not sure exactly what you want to hear in that, but one, having worked in the department, from the employee side, the biggest issue is the state of flux. We need to bring this to a solve one way or the other, Nat. The employees you wouldn't believe the amount of time that's going on. Well, I hear you're moving here, I hear you're moving there, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and there's a tremendous amount of flux in the employees. If nothing else, let's get an answer one way or the other, whatever's going to be in that. I think we all realize that the new mayor, as typically happens, they'll bring the transition team in, and there'll be lots of discussion about what's going to happen with the new team and that. If I had a personal preference, I'd say let's hold off on this organization, let the new mayor do his thing, whatever he wants to do, whatever that may be, because I don't know what his goals are going to be at this point in time, but that's an option in that. Secondly, I like the concept of a project person, whatever you want to call it, a leader to bring this together, Nat. I guess the one issue I would have is that we're tasking the Director of Public Works to take on a bazillion hats, and in addition, you're going to be kind of this project coordination person in that. And it takes a lot of time. I mean, we were just talking now, I think you're going to hear, I was going to stay for the deteriorated building discussion you're going to have with the FANGs and that. That's a $140 million project. That's a huge project. And what we typically do, we'll assign one of our plan people to be the coordinator on our side of the house. Again, on the building side of the house, and that we're not going to deal in the tax exemptions and all those kind of things. And that, it's a big job, even just for a $140 million project to walk that through the system and make sure things are working, making sure that the right stuff is submitted in that. We know that's a big issue in that. So I think we need something to bring that all together. I'm not sure because you've got, I think, financial issues to deal with a lot of these issues in that. We're talking about how do we spur on more development. It's not just making the permit process faster. That's a piece, but there's also the how we really generate, the desire to actually build more things. And I think that's a real key issue in that. And I'm not sure one person in the public works side can make that happen, that if you will. So I think there's a need for some type of a project coordinator or whatever you want to call that person. I'm just not sure putting that all on the back of the public works director is the right answer to make that really come true on a project-by-project basis. I know that since I've been here, Nat, I kind of came in, there's a lot of push and pull going on between the various departments at the time. I think we've tried to bring that noise level down. I've met with Andre and Bill and many of the builders and that when we first got here, Nat, and I said, what are the issues? Tell me what the problems are. Let's figure out what we've got to do. And I think the mayor, when I came in and met with him before he even decided to take the job, and I said, what's the issue? He says, make the builders happy. That's the whole idea, and that's what we're trying to do. And we meet monthly with the builders and that. We try to walk through those things. I think if you look at the numbers between 2010 when the plan started and now, I think you'll see that we've got about half the number of employees we had back then. And then you'll see that we're turning out, residential permits. 90% of them are done in 10 days. It's not a big, long process there in that. Usually where the delay comes is when we come up with here's an issue. We need to solve this issue. And we ask the engineer or the designer, you need to look at this issue and solve it. We try to get our comments done in a timely fashion, but again, it's up to the owner, the designer, the engineer to then resolve whatever that comment may be. And there is, I think when you think about the issues on, we heard from Cooking on Housing, it took us 8 months to get a permit. Well, the issue there was, it's not only just the building permit, they had a conditional use permit they had to go through. And a lot of that's built into there is like, how do you involve the public? If we were, great, we would be able to say, hey, let's go ahead and let's get a concept, we'll approve it over the phone, we'll make things happen, and you'll have your permit tomorrow type thing in it. But there's a lot of public involvement requirements that have to happen on that. And there's always discussions on those kind of issues of, well, how are you going to make this work? Or how about the traffic impacts or those kind of things? And so it takes a lot of time to resolve those, which, again, we can do that faster, there's no question, but you're going to get a lot of pushback, especially from the neighborhoods in that, going, hey, this may not be quite the right approach in that. We're working very hard. I think you'll see at your meeting on the 26th, we're going to have in front of you the approval for what we call the E-Plan review, which is the ability to submit your plans online. We think we've found a great package that's being used in about 100 other locations right now, so we know it's geared for that thing and that. And we've got a lot of response already from people that they're talking about, even making 30% reductions in overall approval time periods for the actual building permit side of the house. We think that's going to be a great addition. So I think we're doing things to go the right direction on that. And maybe I'll just stop there.
Any questions for him? Okay, thank you. Ernie, I'm going to lead off with you for overall discussion.
Thank you. Well, I apologize before I start because I'm probably going to ramble just a little bit here. But, one of the things is I keep hearing personalities here, Greg Jones, Joe Murdy, Ron Thompson, et cetera, so forth. I think as an elected body, we have an obligation to make sure that we've got a structure that works. And typically, if you've got a good structure, if you've got problems, then you really should look into personalities because that's what prevents that from working and working well. We've heard from a number of people about having a project coordinator. We had a great work session here a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of regret that some of you didn't stay to hear that because we got it pretty loud and clear during that project or during that work session that there's issues. So I think you have to remove personalities from this, come up with a good structure that works. And the one thing that we've heard consistently is his project coordinator needs to be able to get everybody in the same room at the same time. When you're there and you got a project moving and you're dealing with fire, you're dealing with traffic, you're dealing with your permitting, so that if there's an issue, it's not our customer that's running from department to department to department, but the departments are all there at that time if there's an issue. I think we're very fortunate because we got some incredible municipal employees, and I mean that. There's some great people out there. I also think we're fortunate because we got great contractors in this community. When you get Lee Bakers, he conned everybody. I mean, those individuals are going to come and they're going to go, and every time we've had them, they have gone. But under our current system with the inspections and the way that we work it, that one, I hopefully we're on top of it, but that is the inspection and making sure we're able to do that in a quick and in a safe manner. What we have right now, and I can tell you from experience of people that are in the market of buying homes, we're under the impression that what we're doing is making sure that we're really building great homes, and we are. But what you've got right now are buyers that will settle to get a home, even if there may be a couple of issues with it. They settle for it because the market's driving that. They don't have the ability to go shop and say that John's building a better house than Andre. If they find one from either one of you, they're going to buy it, because if they don't, it's gone. So we're creating a problem inside our community when we create that by the fact that we're not keeping up with it. So I think the important thing here is, and that's why I support the reorganization. I think we all need to understand what we're talking about when we are doing the reorg. But we need to get that put into place and have the structure that it takes. And then you have to make sure that the right people are in the right departments when you're doing that. That's what's crucial to me. And I'll tell you, it's no secret for any of us when there's a problem, because that's when the builders are going to start calling. If you've got a structure and it's working well, you're not going to hear very much out of these guys, because they're able to go pull permits, get buildings built, and inspections done in a timely manner. And that comes from the right structure to make sure that it works, and it's not with, like I say, trying to build a structure around a personality. That'll just never work. And with that, that's where I am. I believe the reorg would be positive. And the other comment I'd make is, whoever designed our election system here did a pretty damn good job, because every 2 years we elect assembly members, and then on the third year we elect a mayor, so that the following year when a new mayor comes in, we've got 11 assembly members that have been there with the experience and background that should help that mayor through the first year. The continuity comes from us, ladies and gentlemen. New mayors can come and go, but when we drop our guard is where we get a problem, and we end up with ports that are a nightmare, because we have an obligation, although we all look for change when we elect a new mayor, we have an obligation to try to make sure that we don't get into some of the messes we do when we leave it strictly on their shoulders. Enough said. I apologize for rambling.
And I apologize for this not being a question, but I have heard from employees on the front lines at Elmore, and they've said the way it's not currently being done, but how it's been done for the last couple of years has been very problematic to them, because they too have to go from department to department, and they feel that they've had a tough time being responsive to the client, and they feel that we need to do something about it. So now that's not all the employees, but I have heard that feedback. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Steele?
I've done it. I remodeled my house. I know most people have heard some of the nightmares, but it is a nightmare. And a lot of it's nightmare with the architects. Architects draw up the plans, the engineers sign off on them, goes in for plan review. They find something, they give them the plans back. They go redraw the plans, make the correction, bring it back. Oops, something else. And that takes a lot of time, and I think the E-plan will help in that regard, because the turnaround time, most of these folks do their drafting on on CADs, and it's easier to make the corrections and get the turnover. But I do like the idea of somebody who can walk it through if that's necessary, and it seems to me that is a bigger problem, the coordination of the various components. Because then you go over to planning, and they say, oh, well, that's got to go to the planning and zoning board. Well, okay, so here, go notice it for 21 days or whatever it is. Anyway, it is a nightmare and it needs change, but I'm not sure one guy at the top is going to make that change. I think it's more flow and documentation and help through the process. Certainly for the people who don't do it all the time, it's hand-holding, but changes are needed.
Bill?
Thanks. I don't know well enough how the current operation works. I mean, when I first got on the assembly, Ms. Domboski was kind enough to take me to the planning center over there, permit center, and show me around, because it's an important place to understand for any of us. But it's taking more than a year for me to get my head around the whole thing. So I don't know if the current organization is good, bad, or whatever. So I can't say with any intelligence if it needs to be reorganized. It's clear that there are problems, I think, with the current system. In my limited experience, I've heard a lot of complaints about getting permitting through. And because we live in a place that has a lot of built-in impediments to development cost-wise, I think our biggest obligation as a city is to make sure there are no additional friction points that make that even worse. So we have to make that organization be as efficient as possible. So my question, and there is a question, is with respect to this particular reorg, and I guess it's a question for you, Mayor, is this just a possible, this is one option for reorganizing it to make it more efficient, or is this the result of like, this is the best approach we can come up with to make this permit center run as efficiently as possible? Because I certainly would hope that that's what we do. I just would like to know from you.
Yeah, well, I think so, because, again, I harken back to my opening comments. You know, if you've ever been in the retail trade, you know, the first thing you do is listen to your customers, and the building community are our customers, and they're the ones that live, eat, and breathe this every single day. We brought this forward based on all the input we've heard over the last several years. We try to change, and quite frankly, the customer, you know, if I was delivering a bad sandwich at my pub, they would tell me it's a bad sandwich. Well, the customers are telling me that the process can work more efficiently under the structure that used to exist, as they mentioned back, you know, probably in the Meister administration. I just always harken back to listen to the people that have to do this every single day. They're the ones down at the permit center. They're the ones that have to go back and forth between departments. Having, as was explained, that one silo makes so much sense, because on the public works side, I mean, what does public works do? They build things, right? And what does the private development community do? They build things. And so just the synergy of having people in a department that understand about building and the process and the timing, and as you mentioned, there's enough impediments with a short building season, which is why, and with all respect to Mr. Kniefel, I would totally disagree about waiting. You want to lose a whole building season when you have an opportunity to do something that will be in effect during this building season. I don't want to do that to these guys. I want to get this done based on their real life recommendations, based on the past experience that we've seen has been effective. And it's not about any one individual. You know, you've got a building official, Mr. Kniefel, you've got Mr. Thompson is the head of the department. You've got very experienced people in various levels of public works, you know, in between those guys. And it's really the synergy of that whole team. And I just think it's timely to do it. Let's listen to our customers, and good business listens to its customers.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the bottom line is that it is about customer service. Our employees and us as assembly members, we're all public servants. That means we serve the public, and we want to do what's right, and we want to represent the interests of all the citizens within this community. And Ms. Johnson, I really appreciate your comments concerning comments that you have received from employees. But I've received comments too, and they're just the opposite of the ones that you received, and I'm sure you're not surprised by me saying that. And one of my concerns is, you know, are there any positions that are going to be lost in this reorganization? Whether it's their filled positions or vacant positions? Yes or no?
No.
None?
There are no anticipated reduction in force or addition in force under this reorganization.
Really? Okay, because I don't remember hearing that before, but you just said it right now, and I'll believe what you're saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I got Mr. Hall and Mr. Dombrowski. Mr. Hall?
Okay, second bite, no more bites.
It's your birthday.
I think let's don't confuse ourselves. You know, the city works under a one guy at the top operation. The one guy is the mayor. He's got all kinds of departments under him. In going to this structure out here with the one guy at the top, you know, you've still got all of the departments below. And that one guy at the top doesn't necessarily mean, and I would assume if the guy at the top is good at his job, he's not going to be the one sitting in the room with everybody, but he's going to make sure that there's somebody that does do that. That's what's important, is that you've got somebody running the organization, that you don't get this, you know, that not my department. Well, when you've got that one person, i.e. the mayor here, nobody can say the mayor doesn't get to use that. It's not my department. They're all his. So whoever the head of this new structure is, all of those departments are down below him. And the other thing that we've also got to take on our shoulders is the fact that we do a lot to not make their job very easy, because as you heard when we had the Live, Work, Play home group here, they were talking, they kept using prescriptive, not descriptive, that it's important. And when we are writing our code sometimes, we get way too descriptive, and I'll put it even that way, specific, where we take that discretion away. So we've got individuals out there working for us that maybe would love to be able to make something a little bit easier, but if they actually look at municipal code, we don't give them any leeway to be able to make decisions. So I think we've got work that we've got to do, a great deal of work, to make sure that we give them documents that we keep the quality of life that we want in this community, but we don't put them in an absolute box with no wiggle room within that box.
Mr. Bowski, ma'am.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify two things, or actually add to the comments. I think the last time we had this discussion, Mr. Frost was here, he said he supported this reorg. But also, I have a text message from the president of AMEA, who also says she supports this reorg. So I think there is, what Jennifer was referring to earlier, there is frustration within the employees that I've heard about, that have said, you know, whether it's multiple departments interpreting the same code differently, or reporting to different people. You know, I too have been critical. I mean, I supported this reorg a couple years ago, or something like it. But at the same time, I also was leery about doing this for a person. And I think the message that I'm hearing is it's not being done for Ron Thompson specifically. It's being done for continuity. And if that's the case, I think that would benefit the new mayor. But with that said, I think Ernie's 100% right. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this body is the body that has the knowledge base, and we have a new administration that's coming in that will take a while for them to get up to speed. And are we going to lose a building season? So my question to assembly members who might vote no is, what's your alternative? You know, I think there needs to be, the fact of the matter is, the building industry is a big part of our economy. It's an engine. And if we just do nothing, can we afford 1 year of flat growth or no growth? That's the question.
Any other comments from assembly members? Well, that completes this work session. We start the next one at 1 o'clock. Thanks for being here.